Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to our Working Together series, live from the Netiv Zoom room down in Houston, Texas, with our good friend Rod Bryant. And we're just waiting on the arrival of Rabbi Karmi Ingber, who told us last week he was going to be in Israel this week. So we know that that's always a hot spot for inspiration, especially with the festival of Pesach coming up. So I'm sure if he comes on, we'll be getting some good Torah inspiration. So, but for now, let's see how Rod is doing. Shalom, Rod. You're live on the Noahide World Center social media, and so good to be with you as always. We hope all's well down in Texas.
All is well. Things are good. Weather's good. And it's really good to see you guys that join us here on YouTube and Facebook and wherever else it's streaming live. This is actually a weekly treat for us because we don't stream any of our classes live on like social media platforms. It's usually done on Zoom because we kind of want more of a private audience to be able to ask questions and to not have to worry about
the atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. And it really helps. And I have plenty of individuals like today. Someone sent me a text going, "Hey, I didn't get to finish out listening to the question and answer at the end of the session 2 weeks ago. Can you send me that?" And of course, we archive, and all of our people that sign up for the classes actually get the unedited version of the classes, which include the discussion stuff. So it makes it nice. And look who entered the room.
Oh, the Rabbi show?
Live from the Holy Land.
Live from the Holy Land. Here we are.
Where in Eretz are you?
Ingber?
We are in Ramat Beit Shemesh.
Ramat Beit Shemesh.
A little bit of an American enclave here. A lot of Americans.
Well, Rabbi, we're going to turn the class over to you. It's always good to be with you. We hope that you have a joyous time in the land of Israel, and we hope you find it inspirational and share some beauty of Torah with us. We so appreciate you've been on fire the last several weeks, especially since you started that book of Jonah. I think it's just been mind blowing and thought inspiring for sure.
Okay, wonderful. So let's keep the party rolling then, I guess. So, I want to talk a little bit about
recording in progress.
We have this week's Torah portion, and it started a new book in the Torah called Vayikra, which is translated strangely as Leviticus. Gotta watch out for translation. You have a lot of wrong things, some bad translations. So, okay, Leviticus, I guess, is because it's to the Levites, but that's not what the book is called. The book is called Vayikra, and God called. And the book goes to a lot of what's called korbanos. Korbanos are translated, again, another problem, translation as sacrifices. Because now, once you have sacrifices, you got a lot of crazy ideas and a lot of misunderstandings. Let's go with the first one. The first one to realize is this idea of when I sacrifice something for someone else, yes, I'm giving something up, but I'm giving something that they theoretically need. That's the sacrifice. You need it, and I'm sacrificing mine to give to you. It's a little bit bizarre in a relationship with Hashem, with God, because he doesn't need anything. What is the point of you sacrificing something that he doesn't need? He doesn't need anything. By definition, God has no lacking. He is perfect in every way. So therefore, what can you give him? He gives you something, so you give it back to him as if he needs it. It's strange. And this in the ancient world was a weird thing. People were into sacrifices, and they sacrificed human sacrifices. They sacrificed all these different things. So what is the difference between? I mean, a billion differences, but I want to explain one aspect today of why sacrifices in the general world was a very, very bad thing, and why the idea of a korban, which is translated as sacrifice, this offerings to God, why it's a very good thing. Okay, a lot of depth to it. I want about 1 point today to understand what is this book, which is called, translated as Leviticus, that God is telling us these laws of offerings that we can't do today. We can't do them today. We will be able to do them in the future in the time of the temple. We can't do them today. So what do we do today? So the rabbis say, it's a verse in the prophets that, and it's very important to know this, especially if you run into missionaries, they'll ask you this all the time. And the answer is very simple. It says in the prophets, it says, we will, instead of the offerings, God now said we will do that with our lips, with our speech, with our prayer. Well, how does prayer substitute for offerings? It does, because the prophet tells us to substitute for offerings. But how does it do that? Why would prayer to God? It seems very, very different. How is it so connected? And I want to share with you another story that we kind of mentioned a few weeks ago in something that was the hardest commandment for a compassionate person to do. An evil person likes to fight wars. They actually don't care. They'll fund wars, fight wars, keep wars going on, because they really don't care. A compassionate person, it's the hardest thing to go into fight someone else. You can't believe it. You have to, you don't want to do it. The person is really compassionate. We talked about the story of King Shaul, who was the first king, and he was commanded to fight Amalek, which was the root of evil, and he had to fight them, and he couldn't destroy them. He couldn't do it. And what happened was he left over some aspects, the king, which he figured was the root of the nation, and some of the animals to bring an offerings to God. And when Shmuel comes to him, the prophet, he says, what hello to you, Shaul. He says, blessed to you. I have done the word of Hashem. Now, Shaul tells Shmuel he listened to God, but he didn't. Does he think he's faking the prophet? He really believes he did what God said. And then Shmuel says, what do you mean? I hear the sounds of the sheep. What is that sound I hear? And he says the people wanted to save it over and bring his offerings to God. And then the prophet Shmuel says to Shaul, he says, does God want your offerings? Like the listening to God? Is that what he wants? It is better to listen than to go and to do this. The whole thing is you're hearing and not the offering. So what is the comparison between you and I? Hearing and what's that going on? All right, I want to explain all these ideas. I want to explain why this book is called Vayikra, calling out. And I want to explain what this term, not sacrifice, but korban. Korban is in the root of the word to bring close. How does this process of the offerings bring us close to God? And why did the great king Shaul, think he did what God wanted, and he totally didn't? And Shmuel's got to say, hey, listen, better to listen to God than to go and bring offerings. Yeah, okay. What was he thinking? So I want to start by explaining something very, very important. And this is, I'm not saying this to go and to get into politics of modern times and this and that, but I want you to understand something. When we talk about Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, it says, Vayeda Adam es Chava. Adam knew his wife, Chava. Very weird term. People say, oh, he knew in the biblical sense. What is that? Why is the biblical sense? Why is it called to know? Why is the act of a husband and a wife unifying? Why is that called knowing? Why is that called knowing? What is knowing? What is knowing somebody else? Well, like this. Let's say I want something And I figure that you can get it from me. But you know what? If you can get it from me, maybe some other person can get it from me also. Maybe someone else can get it from me also. It's not really about you. I don't really know you as the other person. It's that I have an objective. I want something, and I'm looking for someone who can give me what I want. So if you can deliver, good. I'm going to say it in a very coarse way. If a person goes and has a relationship with someone, but they don't really care about the other person, and the other person is something that they want to know, and they recognize the person as that person, then the other person is a convenience. People who have relations just for the physical component, and there's not the person there, so it really could have been anyone. Take the same face, the same look, put on somebody else. What do they care? The idea of the knowledge is the idea that I recognize there is the other, and I want to unify with that other and become one. And that is what the text says. V'hayu lebasar echad. The male and female become one flesh. The child is the representation of the one flesh. Okay? They become one. Literally. I mean, literally. They are able to unite in their act of connection. Two people that become one, and that is expressed through having a child. That is the expression of those two people. Now, I don't want to specifically get into this, but one of the 7 Noachai laws and one of the Torah laws, it's very, very crucial, is illicit relations. That certain things don't connect. They can't connect. There has to be a unification of two people that can connect. Now, let me explain something here. And this is a very important thing because it does change a little bit with male, female, but there's variations to it. But in general, and if you look at the biology of it, you'll see the male is in the act of intimacy is the giver, and the female is the receiver. The man gives the seed, the woman takes the seed and builds the child. That is called an act of a mashpia, a giver, and a receiver. And every single interaction where you become one with someone, there needs to be that ability. I mean, literally, it's like they have, when they want to unify two pieces, two things that go together, there has to be a lacking and a filling that has to be uniting. Any other situation is not a complete union, because if there is two givers or two receivers, how could they unite? The male female specifically, and the relationship that is done to a particular person in that time is the ability to become one, because one is providing what's called the giving component, and one takes. Now, the taking is not for the purpose of taking. The taking is the purpose of giving. Let me explain what that means. If you have a person who comes home and he gives his wife flowers, okay? When a husband brings his wife flowers, he feels good. Okay, ladies, just to understand that. He starts to feel good. I had this guy once, I was counseling him, and I was trying to get him to get out of himself. He had all his complaints and this and that. I said, go buy your wife a present. Buy this, buy that, And then when he did it finally and he gave it, he said to me, wow, I don't know. I felt completely different. I felt that all of a sudden it stirred up in him the emotions that he wanted. Now, let's say the wife takes the present and says, yeah, great, thanks. Now get out of here. That's not a receiver, because she's receiving it not as the connection to the giver, but rather she's receiving it because she wants it separate. So she says, yeah, give me a BMW. Thank you very much. But call me in 6 months. That's not what it is. When the wife gets the flowers and she feels so good about it, it's because it's a receiving from the giver, and therefore her receiving is a giving back to the giver. When the husband sees the wife with that joy that she has, that you gave to me, and I want to receive this because you gave it to me, that unifies them. That is the quality of really two things that become united. The deepest relationship is that male-female bond, which can't work in any other situation. And so, yes, there is obviously the laws of that forbidden certain things to do, certain relationships are totally forbidden, but to understand the deeper meaning of it, it means because these things don't become united. If you have, two people that don't have that quality of the male-female to unite, they're not really becoming one. And then the world creates what it creates. So that is a very, very important basis to understand. The whole world, it said, was built male and female. Every aspect, okay? Every aspect has that component. Now, let's give it in another sense. Let's say I wanna teach you something. And you say, well, that's very nice, but I'm also a teacher. Okay, great. Now, I really don't want to hear what you have to say because I have my own ideas and I don't want to hear your ideas. So how's that conversation going to go? Not very well, because you have two that are giving and none that are receiving. They're not talking, there's no unification there because I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'm not open to receiving what it is that you are trying to impart. The idea of the korbanos, the offerings, are not sacrifices. That's wrong. And this is why the nations of the world did these crazy offerings. You know why? Because the real idea of the korban, the offering, is to bring me close to God. How does that happen? Because I say, I want to receive from you. The bringing of the offering is to say, I am lacking. I don't have. I am trying to go and to, so to speak, appease, not really appeasing God, but in the sense that I'm giving of myself to show that I am open. I need to receive from you. That was why Shmuel said to Shaul, what did you do here? God doesn't want your offerings. He wants you to listen. What does that mean? Shaul thought, I'm doing exactly what God wanted. I'm doing exactly what he wanted. What did he want? It can't be that he wanted me really to destroy these people. What's the point? It can't be. So he must have meant something else. You know why? Because he really wasn't listening to what God wanted. He made his calculation. Somebody comes to you and says to you, this is what I want you to do. But you say, I want something different. So you couldn't have meant that. You couldn't have meant that. He wasn't fooling around. Saul thought he did what God wanted. He said, it can't be. That doesn't make sense. And that's why Samuel the prophet says to him, no, it's not. It's about really hearing. As we said last week, the ears are always open. It is, the ears and the body is like the female relationship. So the ears are open to receive. And therefore, you misunderstood the whole thing. God doesn't want your offerings. Your offerings are you're making your statement. It's not your receiving, it's your own ego. You don't think God said this, so therefore you have your own ideas. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what the nations of the world did. And I want you to understand this. The sacrifices of the nations of the world, they even made human sacrifices and all these crazy things. You know why? Because it had nothing to do with the relationship to God. The idolatry was called witchcraft, kishuv, black magic. They were trying to manipulate their spiritual forces to get what they wanted, right? That's what it is. If they go and they say, listen, I'm going to make this incantation. This is my genie bottle. I'm going to say this. I'm going to do that, and then I'll get these forces to do what I want. That's the way people relate to God today. They think, oh, they're going to go. I'll pay my dues. I'll go do this. I'll say that, and then God will give me what I want. But you're not really opening to hearing what He wants. You're pushing what you want, and that is the same thing that they were doing with their offerings. Their offerings were not about, I am opening myself to get close to you. What do you want me to do? What are you telling me to do? Because I'm open to hearing. That was the power of the korbanos, the offerings. They were to likarev, to bring us close to God. It was a statement of, listen, my life is what my we can't go and give our lives up, because then, unless He wants us to, because then we can't do what He wants us to do. A representation of that is to say, it's like I'm giving myself up, like this offering I'm giving, because I don't have another ability to do something unless I am open to hearing what it is you want. And that's why the book is not called Leviticus, it's called Vayikra. God called specifically to Moses to saying, I want you. It's not about somebody else. It's about this relationship. That is where we have to start from. We got to think to ourselves, when I'm saying I'm doing this, I'm doing that, so what's my objective? Why do I want that? How do I, what is it that I am trying to receive here? Am I really trying to hear what God says I should do? Is that what I'm about? And that really is, as I said, in the world today, it really is where everything goes awry, because people are not able to have a unifying relationship where when I am giving to you and you're receiving, and the receiving is giving back to me, however it is, but it's a unification. Unification means you got to be open to receive what another, if it's a teacher, if it's a spouse, what they're giving, to be able to become really unified. That is what this book of Vayikra is about. It's about the way to come close to God by realizing we're lacking. People, it's an amazing thing, because we fight it all the time, but we are created in a way that we are lacking. And if you think about it, 4 hours go by, and that's why we have some Jewish fast days. When a person fasts, what happens is you really realize how fragile you are. You don't realize, when your stomach is full, you don't realize it. Go 5, 6 hours, 7 hours without eating, all of a sudden you're like, why did God create it that way? Because He's saying to us, yes, when you realize your own nature, that I've created you with this lacking, but the lacking is actually how the process starts. I want to tell you something. People ask, like, they think, who, let's take male, female, who starts the relationship? So people think, very often, certainly in old school, they would say it was the man. It really isn't. It really isn't. In a couple, when the female has she has the power of called shuka, of yearning, more than the male. The male may have desire, he wants something, but the female has a yearning. That yearning is how the process starts. When she sees, wait a minute, I have this yearning, so that draws then the male energy. That's how the process works. So when God created us in a way we have lacking, when we say, wait a minute, I recognize my lacking, and now I want to be connected, That's the greatest thing in the world. That's the process. So we spend so much time trying to tell ourselves, no, we got it all together, instead of taking a minute and saying, you know what? I don't. And, that's the way you made me, God. Help me to take the next step. That is the only ability a human being has to be able to receive. Like I mentioned last week, if you think your vessel is full, you can't get anything. So the process really starts from our perspective when we realize that we are lacking. If we don't eat 5 hours, I'm crazy. So when we realize that we need everything, and that's the idea of the blessings, that we make blessings on food. The idea is to have a cognition that I actually constantly need. It's bizarre. We constantly need air. We constantly need food. We are not independent. And people like to think they are, but reality is, if you don't breathe for a couple of minutes, you can't survive. If you don't eat for a couple of days, you can't survive. You need constant ability to have intake into the world. We're made that way. It's not a bad thing. It's only a bad thing when we deny it and don't realize it. When we actually realize that human beings were created in a way that they have the lack, when you realize that you have the need, then you can be filled. It's like an amazing thing. I'll explain to you how it works with a couple. It's literally like if you imagine when a couple comes together, it's like two parts being put together. One fits into the other, but it's not arbitrary. The couple means that the lacking that one has is fulfilled with the other specifically. That's why that couple is together. That's why it's not arbitrary. It can't go any place. It can't just be, oh yeah, well, it's this person, and well, this person is married to that person. So no, that's not your perfect fit. That is the process that we have to start. The process is to go and to say to ourselves, the fact that I have lackings shouldn't depress me. It shouldn't make me think, oh, what's wrong? No. Take a second and say, wow, I'm lacking something. And that was created in a way to realize that I want a relationship with the source that is the only thing that can fill me. And that really, ladies and gentlemen, is why prayer takes the place of the offerings, right? What's the connection? Because prayer is the point where I say, I lack. And not because, and like I said to you before, not like in a relationship with a woman, the wife says, yeah, give me a BMW and go get out of here. It's not that. I want the flowers because I want the relationship. I want the connection to the one that's giving me. As people, we call out to God and we say, we're lacking, fill us up. If it's for the purpose of ourselves and God leave us alone, that's like the idolaters who did all their crazy sacrifices. If it's really from a place of recognizing that I'm lacking, and the only thing that fulfills me is that deeper relationship I have with the source, then a person can actually make himself a vessel to be able to have that connection. And that's what this book is about. It's how to build that connection to God by realizing He is the source, and He created us with these lackings to be able to recognize them and say, okay, I'm not pushing my own trip. Fill me up and connect me to you. That's my thought, and I'm open for ideas, questions, comments.
Well, that is
Rabbi,
quite profound thought, for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. Last week, we kind of touched on the idea that for many of us, the concept, or to translate the term korban to sacrifice, for those of us who come from our other past, we tend to shy away from that and really endear ourselves to the term of an offering, because in the Western mindset, those are like almost two different things. When you say sacrifice, it's like blood and, guts and glory and all that stuff. And then an offering is about kurbaning. It's about coming close to Hashem. And I really appreciate you sharing that today. It was really good.
Yeah, my pleasure. You see, the problem is, again, we have to work with the language we have.
Right.
But even offering has a kind of like connotation as if, I'm giving it and like, hey God, I got.
Yeah, like I'm going to do you a favor.
So
right.
we have to have it with the proper understanding. It's
right.
Of lack, and that's why it was really, it's a very powerful vehicle. And just to share with you, it's an amazing thing. I actually discussed this in my book. This concept I'm going to tell you now. There is a real concept of proper ecology. Okay, the person goes around and chops down a tree and makes paper and writes words of hate, pornography, whatever he does, he is not only a bad guy on that, he's also a tree killer. You arrest him as a tree killer. Why? Because how do you have a right to destroy something in the world to use it negatively? You don't. You don't. God created a world, and everything in the world has a function. The last thing in creation is humanity. And the reason for that is, as it says in Psalms, it says, that when Adam and Eve were created, he turned to the creation. He says, come, let us sing praises to God. What did that mean? Humanity was the pinnacle of the creation. And he has to take everything, male and female have to take everything in the world and elevate it and use it to become greater, to make the world great. And therefore, you're allowed to cut down a tree to go and to make paper, to write things that are good and things that are beautiful in the world. That's the function of the things in the world. If you take anything in the world and you destroy it for no reason, or you break it for a negative reason, you're destroying God's world. And you're actually considered to be lower than the other things because God put you in the position to elevate it. So now I have a question. Can we eat meat? Well, Adam wasn't allowed to eat meat. Adam was not allowed to eat meat. God allowed Noah to eat meat. But eating meat is not so simple. Not so simple. Talmud talks about it and questions whether, now why is it not so simple? Because let's say when you eat meat, I always tell people, I think I told you guys those. I used to live in Manhattan. I went to NYU, and there was a street that had these two restaurants across from each other. One was McSorley's Bar and Grill, and one was Eden's Health Food Restaurant. And I remember walking down the street, and you see people coming out of each establishment, right? The people coming out of the McSorley's Bar and Grill just had a steak and raw. People coming out of the Eden Health Food Store, oh man, I won with an alfalfa sprout and one with the world. Now, what was happening in these two places? Well, you are what you eat. So when you eat an animal, you actually have a very different energy. You've taken the energy of that animal. You have, literally. So now, if you're going to eat an animal, in order to act like an animal, who said you can eat the animal? Why should you kill the animal for? You're also an animal. You act like an animal. If I eat the animal and now I have some strength and I do good things, I have actually elevated the animal. That is real spiritual ecology. Everything in the world, plant, mineral, plant, animal, if I take it and I use it in a way that makes the world better, I'm actually elevating the essence of what that creation is and what it was made for. So I know Pete is not going to like this. I'm saying it, but it happens to be very true. But I agree. People who just take things and destroy things and use things in negative ways, who said? Who told you could do that? You can't. But you can and you must and you should take everything in the world and use it in the way that it has been given to make the world a better place. So you can eat that meat and take the energy and go out and do good things. That you could do. But to go into and to eat meat and to act like an animal, who said? Why? So that's a very, very important point. And that's why the offerings were so crucial, because they were vehicles through which not the animal or whatever was brought was like a statement for the person. The person was like, wow, that could have been me. That should have been me. I'm giving myself. Well, you can't give yourself. You can't give them unless God asks you to. You're supposed to live. So what happens is that God wants me to continue and do all the millions of things I could do. The individual creations in the world have a certain function, but they don't have like a human being could do everything, could do all these different things. So an animal has a certain function. If I'm using it as part of a process that is elevating my connection to God and thereby the connection of the world, I'm actually elevating the root of that creation. Same way if I eat it. But you can't just do it arbitrarily. It's a very, very powerful, deep idea. I know it's very foreign to us. It's certainly foreign. We don't have offerings. There is a discussion. There's one opinion that holds the offerings in the future will be not animal. I don't know. Most people hold that. He's one opinion that holds it'll be grain and different things like that. But either way, it doesn't matter, because it matters. But the concept is the same. The concept is that however it's going to work in the future, however it's going to look in the future, the idea will be very, very clear that just like I'm not allowed to chop down a tree for no reason. It's actually one of the 13 commandments. It's forbidden to destroy something. It's forbidden to break things even for no reason. You can't just do that. And certainly not to destroy things for negative reasons. It's terrible. I want you to understand how philosophically terrible it is. It's not, I understand calling someone a tree killer is not necessarily, going to shake them up, but it really is. Like you took the thing that God gave in the world to be used for whatever it is, and now you're just destroying it. So that is this idea. It's elevating everything in the creation that we're doing. Yeah, Laura.
Rabbi, Laura has a question.
Yeah.
My question is, thank you, Rabbi, by the way. My question is, when non-Jewish people obviously eat not kosher meat, how does that meat get elevated, even though in our minds that we know that we want to do something good, sustaining ourselves?
Right. So I think the way to do it for someone who's not Jewish is to eat the food and to be cognizant of the fact that I'm going to have a certain energy after whatever I eat. And the food that I'm eating, I should be thinking that I am eating this now to be able to do good things.
I'm sorry, that doesn't help elevate the...
Why not? When you eat something, it becomes you, literally. Literally. When I eat something, it becomes part of my own existence. So now, if I eat something and I go and I'm it's part of me now, and I take that energy and I use it in a positive way, then that is a concept of elevating. Right? That makes sense? And it's very important. It's just by the way, it's very important for the things that you do in your day, everything we do, when we think about it in terms of the purpose of it, it changes what I'm doing. So let's say I'm going out and I'm relaxing and I'm hanging out. Two people could be relaxing and hanging out, but they could be very different. One person understands that I need time to relax. I need time to recharge my battery because I'm doing something in this world and I need to have a clear mind. I need to feel positive. So that person there, the relaxing is actually a very positive, constructive act. The person who's relaxing because there is nothing to do anyway, and that's what I do. It's two people doing the same exact thing, but totally different. One's purpose is, I have a purpose, I have a meaning, I have something to do in this world, and I need this as part of that. And the other person, it's the ends in itself. Good.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Other questions?
Sandy. Sandy is next.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Rabbi. I don't know if this exactly ties in with what you were saying at the beginning about Hashem does not need anything from us. And then about Saul and his thinking that he had obeyed, that he was going to sacrifice these animals. I found these verses in Isaiah 1, beginning in 11 through 17. I won't read all of it, but it starts out, "Why do I need your numerous sacrifices, says Hashem? I am sated with elevation offerings of rams and the fat of fatlings, the blood of bulls and sheep and goats I do not desire." And then he goes on to talk about your actions are detestable to me. You have blood on your hands. You've done this and that. So all these sacrifices mean nothing because of the way they live. And then he finishes up with, in verse 16, "Wash yourselves, purify yourselves, remove the evil of your deeds from before my eyes. Cease doing evil. Learn to do good. Seek justice. Vindicate the victim. Render justice to the orphan. Take up the grievance of the widow." It just makes me think there, while sacrifices were a commandment, we've got to be living a good life before those sacrifices even mean anything.
Right.
Those offerings mean anything. So I thought of those verses and I thought it might connect back with what you were saying earlier.
It does, because again, that whole idea is so strange to us. We don't live in a world that's the reality right now, because honestly, if it was available, we would do it wrong. We wouldn't do it right. We're not like there's a sensitivity to be able to understand that was a certain level of reality after you had the right perspective and you were doing all of the things you needed to do, and you were doing justice, and then you wanted to connect and come in a deeper way, then I understand it. But when you think that it is on its own, the action is the vehicle to the feeling here. The idea of the offering is that I want to do what God says, and that's my goal, and this is a process that I open myself up to receive, to be able to understand what I should be doing. But as long as I have my own agenda, it becomes a negative thing. That's what Isaiah is saying. It becomes a negative thing, and that's what you see. People who are doing these things, who have their own, it's like a very, I'll explain this very, very deep thing. There were many prophets in Israel, and the prophets, there were prophets, and there were laws about prophecy and this and that, and people would go to the prophets and ask them various questions. There was those who did something called black magic, which was a very real, powerful thing. In Egypt, they did it, this and that. And it's in the Torah as a forbidden thing. People who can see the future and promise this and promise that and do this and do that, is considered very. Now, why is it so negative if the guy is like seeing the future through some trick, manipulation of something, or if he's doing a prophecy, it's the greatest thing in the world, he's seeing the future. And the guy seeing the future through some other thing, it's a bad thing. Isn't it both seeing the future? And the answer is that it wasn't about seeing the future. The prophet was wanting to see and understand what God wanted in the world. The sorcerer, so to speak, is believing he's manipulating God to get what he wants. It's a completely different thing. A person who brings an offering and says, I'm I'm like gone. I'm like nothing, and I'm like this animal is. I'm not here. And I just tell me what should I do. I really have this lacking. So he's open to hearing what God wants. The guy who's bringing an offering is trying to do some kind of crazy witchcraft magic. So he is the God, and he's trying to manipulate what he calls the powers of the world. He thinks he can manipulate. Completely different process.
Yeah, that puts a whole very clear view on our life as doing mitzvahs during this era that we don't have a temple, that your intentions are important. Like the way you approach a mitzvah cannot be just casual, like you don't care, or you're doing it like I want to manipulate God to do something for me, so I'm going to do something like this for him. He doesn't need your mitzvahs, right?
It's very, we were talking about things that are not seeming as relevant because the offering's not, but it's relevant in how you think about things. It's relevant in how you approach the understanding of, like, I see this a lot in the general secular world, even amongst people that say they believe in some type of God. There is, like, the idea is, okay, how do I kind of appease this God that this doesn't happen, that doesn't happen, as opposed to really understanding that you can't fool God. You can't, like, say something now. So you have to come and be really genuine. You got to say, okay, listen, well,
people have a mentality that giving to get is somehow okay, but in my understanding, giving to get is investing. If you think about it, when you're dealing before Hashem, you don't give to get, right? I mean, coming out of Christianity, I hate to say it, I mean, there's a lot of prosperity thinking that the more you give, the more you're going to get, when in reality, in no way, shape, or form is Hashem beholden to us. I don't understand the balance often, but I think there's a skew on it when people manipulate, think that they're going to get something out of it.
It's true, but there's a very hard problem here. A very, very, very hard problem, which is, in the end, everything always starts with yourself. It can't not. A person can't go and say, oh, I'm all altruistic. I don't care. It's not real. Every person wants themselves to be, they want their survival, they want their continuity. But it's a fundamental aspect. It's how the process begins. So in other words, it's not wrong to go and say, let's look at it this way. Before we try to get to the altruistic level of doing everything just for the right reasons, the first place to start is to go to our higher selves, to what the real us really wants. That's the key here. In other words, to jump and say, well, I want to, just give to God but it's not real, because every person naturally wants their own existence. That's how the thing starts. So the lofty level is only after we first deal with the self. But what is the idea of the self? So there's the lower self. My body wants this. My ego wants that. There's a deeper part of us, the soul aspect of ourselves, that wants the connection to God, that wants the goodness. I want it. Now, at a certain point, hopefully we get to a place where we become so connected that it's the barrier, the borders are blurred in that sense. But it does start with the person wanting wholeness. Everyone wants wholeness. The low level person thinks their wholeness is physical objects. The higher level person starts to realize my wholeness is something else. And they seek that out, and that's good, because if they do seek out wholeness in an honest way, then they eventually realize the very, 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 very deep topic, the very, very deep idea that their completion only comes because they are a connection somehow in the image of God. They realize that, but it doesn't start that way. It starts from the human being is always in a process of yearning. But what do you yearn for? When you're a little kid, you yearn for candy. You get a little older, you yearn for money. So when you start yearning for wholeness in yourself, then what happens is you're already on the deeper path of who you are. And then you can get to what we'll call, the high levels of that. It's not, but it does start with yourself. Like I told you once before, people make a mistake when they say, well, you shouldn't be selfish. Yeah, it's true, but I don't understand. Like, let's say, if every person has the place where their own existence is their priority. Okay, I'm going to be selfless now. Just person will give their life up for what? Now, they'll give their life up for something they see as they're part of something greater. A person might sacrifice their life for a value because they see themselves as part of a greater value. If they see themselves as connected to God, so they have an ability to do that. But the starting place is, you got to understand that the self is your starting position. Now, when I want to become not so selfish, the way that I do it is by expanding myself, not denying myself. Take responsibility for some other people. You have a family. Oh, wait a minute. So I thought me was this. Now me means me and my spouse and my kids. That's kind of me. I just expanded. Okay. Now you have a community. You help in the community. So what you're doing is, it's not that you're saying, I'm not important, everyone in the world's important. It's that I feel myself, I've expanded, that I am connected with those that I expand myself to, those I take responsibility for, those that I feel are part of my world. I invest and I become part of them. So I think you got to be careful, Dan, how we start the process, because yes, there is the sense of people have, there's two parts here. One is the people have the part I was saying more is how they're trying to trick God, which is absurd. Obviously, I'll do this and I'll make this incantation. I'll get this. And that's not real. But to believe that we're at a level where we don't care about ourselves is not good, because you have to care about yourself.
Rabbi, so you're saying there is a stage where expectation is permissible and even desirable?
I think the expectation of wanting to complete myself is the necessary and integral part of the growth process. I want to fulfill myself. Now, here comes the twist. What I'm saying, Dan. When I have a preconceived notion of what that means, now what does it mean for me to be whole? Well, I think it means to me to have a yacht and 10 cars and to be famous. So now I'm not really interested in what is real fulfillment of myself, because I'm not I don't want to go there. I have my idea and I'm pushing for that. That's very different than saying every person wants to be whole, wants to be, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? If you're striving for real wholeness and real completion, you'll be fine because you're not putting on it the preconceived notion of what that would entail, which is now a very specific local thing that you think is what you need, and it might not be. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, it's very important because like how do we do it? But I think the first process, but I think it's not as complicated as I'm saying it today. I apologize. Complicated, but it's not as complicated as I'm saying it because I think that the idea is if you tune into yourself, you realize that what I really want, the deepest part of myself, if you can get it's probably very different than the first response you're going to give. And probably the deeper part, if you get in touch with it, you'll see that it's going to be pretty good. Probably. I believe most people will, it's like there's a counseling technique called core transformation that they do in NLP. And I've done it with people a lot. And it's a very fascinating process. You say to somebody, what do you want? Okay. Guy says, I want money. Okay, great. You got it. Now what do you want? I want a great job. You got it. Now what do you want? I want a massive house. You got it. Now what do you want? And as you say it, inevitably everyone comes to they stop talking about physical things and they start giving answers. I want to feel whole. I want to feel loved. I want to feel connected. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you this. Those in a certain sense you're using other words for God. That's what you're doing. That's what it is. It's amazing. It's amazing that's what it is. You leave the area of defining it as a physical limited thing and you start thinking, you say, what do I really? People want a transcendental experience of experiencing something beyond and greater than myself. So you can call it what you want to call it, but it's you understanding a certain aspect of godliness. That's what it really is. So I mean, what I'm saying is very, very deep, but it's also very, very simple. It's very, very, very deep. It's also very, very simple. Because you think about it, that's what, but the problem is that people get stuck on it, and that's Dan how the manipulation happens. Because what I want is not that. It's not the proper thing that would give me real satisfaction and real wholeness, because it's not that. And instead, what I want is the thing I'm fixated on, that for whatever reason, in my own shortcomings of my life, I have been convinced that's what I need. So then I want something which is not really the root of what I really need and really want.
So it sounds like fantasy at that stage, right?
That's right. And by the way, and it's generally rooted in our own shortcomings. So, for example, if a person was, I just give a silly example. A person, let's say, was very insecure. So now they feel they what they really want is attention. They really want attention because they feel insecure. So what I want to be a star. That's what I want. I want to make it on Broadway. Now, I'm not saying there's not sometimes a very valuable thing a person should do in the world, but you got to question yourself and say, well, why is that why are you fixated on that thing? And the answer usually is, if it's not something that's the ideal thing, it could come from a good place, could come from the expression of who you are, but very often it comes from a lack. I do this. I think I've told you guys about this program I'm doing called the 7 Mindsets, which I created a process of growth for people. And I do counseling techniques with people where I first help them identify their purpose, to be able to say, what am I doing in life? So what happens is that the experiences that we've gone through and that who we are, it does come out that I want to express something in the world. That is good. That is proper. There is something that you want to do in the world, and you've gone through this challenge, that challenge. You've been given these tools, you've been given these traits, these incidents, these day-to-day challenges. And when you realize, oh, wow, this is what I want to express in the world, and you get the right thing, you feel great. I know what I'm doing. But what the problem is, a lot of times people get stuck and they think that they want something which is not real. It's like an external expression of it. I'll give you an example. Most people want a beautiful house. Most people have a picture of a beautiful house. It's not a bad thing. But you got to understand, the reason why most people want a beautiful house and a home is because most people want to have a sense of returning to the root of what they are, want to have a place they feel connected. So it can now get stuck in the big building and the this and that, but in the deeper sense, it really is real. The reason why you want that home is because every human being wants to return to the source and feel that they are connected to something that is really who they are. That's great. But if you get stuck along the way and instead, like you say, I just want the mansion, that's the goal, and then you could miss out what you really want in a home. And anything else in life? That's just an example. But that's it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's actually 1:00 in the morning. I'm gonna sign out here. And we will see you all next week.
Well, thank you Rabbi. So much, Rabbi. Have a wonderful Pesach there in the land of Israel, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, we can have a session next week. Yeah, we probably can. It's going to be close to Passover, but we'll make a little time. All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Rabbi. Shalom,
right,
guys.
Rod, thank you for hosting the Zoom meeting as usual, and we'll see you next week. And
next week. And also, don't forget the classes that are coming up this week, Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday at 7 p.m. and Thursday morning at 10 a.m. for the Parsha study. Hope to see you guys there. Shalom, shalom.
All right.
Recording.